Good day. My name is Joel Helander. Thank you for being with us for this special program. Elisabeth C. Adams, legendary country doctor. When I was young, my favorite books were decidedly biographies. Biographies of great Americans like George Washington, Amelia Earhart, Benjamin Franklin, and later my heroes and heroines as great Americans were closer to home, like Agnes Dickinson Lee, Captain Oliver N. Brooks, Charles D. Hubbard. However, in recent years, when thinking frequently about the late Dr. Elisabeth C. Adams, I realized too that she was a great American. She never had a town-wide funeral. She never had a memorial service, which was at her own direction. But this has given me some lingering emptiness, as I know it has for others. The story of Dr. Adams must be told and retold, told to be remembered, and remembered to be cherished as a great American. Ask almost anybody living in Guilford more than 30 years ago, and they can tell you and can often launch into a personal story of their own about the legendary Dr. Elisabeth C. Adams. She was legendary in the sense that her practice of medicine in Guilford lasted 37 years without interruption. Her home office had a virtual open-door policy 24/7, day and night. Much of her practice was dedicated to house calls for homebound, shut-in patients. She responded when needed, instantly and personally, often without appointments, and way beyond the call of duty. Dr. Adams invested in her community with benefaction and philanthropy, often anonymously. She consoled, she counseled. She could combine skilled medical attention with rare compassion and reassurance. She knew how to meet spiritual needs. She did not seek fame or glory, but selflessly became a giver in this community to anyone and everyone, setting daily living examples for us to live by. Dr. Adams earned our deep and abiding respect for her warm and humane spirit. Elisabeth C. Adams was born and raised in Willsboro, a small town in upper New York State, in the foothills of the Adirondack Mountains, as this map shows. Willsboro borders on Lake Champlain, and the Willsboro population has never been greater than 2,000 people, even to this day. In 1982, I made a 7-day trip to the Adirondack Mountain region with time spent in Willsboro to visit the Adams farmhouse, the local library, and to meet Dr. Adams' closest relative, Festus Smith, a first cousin, and Mr. Smith's wife. The farmhouse, shown here, was still standing in its original condition at that time. Frank Adams, the father of Elisabeth Adams, also grew up on the farm, which encompassed 365 acres of woodland and pasture. Frank Adams was a farmer. He kept about 15 head of cattle, a team of workhorses, sheep, pigs, and chickens. Milk was carried in large cans to the cooperative creamery in the town of Ribber. It's R-E-B-E-R. Eggs were carried to the store and put on credit for purchase of merchandise. Frank and Dora Adams were dedicated to their only child, Elisabeth. Mr. Adams was active in the Methodist Church and in town affairs, not as a politician, but as a sturdy, upright citizen. There are stories about his sterling honesty. He and his wife hosted Methodist prayer meetings in their farmhouse. During my trip to Willsboro in 1982, I was hosted at the Adams farm by Maud Kehoe. Maud Kehoe, Kehoe. She was nearly 90 years of age at that time, and you can see her in this 1982 photo. Maud's husband, Daniel Kehoe, had worked for Frank Adams as a young hired farmhand. Now, in those days, women and girls seldom participated in the farm chores. Dora and Frank Adams hired French-Canadian farmhands who lived over their woodshed. And in this modern view of the Adams farmhouse, you can see where the woodshed, the one-story addition with a center chimney, was located. The farmhouse is scarcely changed to this day. For those of you who may ever visit Little Willsboro, New York, the property address is number 213 Mountain View Drive. And the property owner is Apostles Infinity Love, Inc., an independent Catholic group that uses the place as a religious retreat. Elisabeth Clarice Adams was born on August 18, 1905. Since the remote Adams farm had no electricity, Dora Adams lodged with her parents, the Smiths, in the village center of Willsboro for the birthing. Elisabeth grew up knowing the rigors of farm life. The seclusion of the farm prevented her from having many playmates. She followed gentle pastimes such as riding their old horse Kit, seen in this photo, or playing with dolls. 10-year-old Elisabeth here is wearing a white dress, and she holds the reins. Here's Elisabeth Adams at 11 years of age. And here is Elisabeth at 12 years of age, standing with her father. All of these photos, by the way, were taken from Dr. Adams' album, which she allowed me to scan in archive back in the early 80s. And here is Elisabeth at 13 years of age at her maternal grandparents' camp on the shore of Lake Champlain. When you look in the background, you can see the lake. The health of Elisabeth's father broke, and he was forced to sell the Willsboro farm in 1917. The family passed the winter in Washington, D.C. in 1918, according to Dr. Adams, when this photograph was taken. Dr. Adams told me that it was a quote-unquote a lovely experience in D.C. because she and her father left every morning to spend the day sightseeing in the capital city. Frequently, they sat in the balcony of the Capitol building listening to Senate debates. Elisabeth contracted the measles, which she passed on to her father. In his weakened state, Frank Adams died soon after this photo was taken. Dr. Adams never reconciled this tragic event and often referred to it, and she looked up to father figures most of her life. Elisabeth's early education was received in this one-room schoolhouse adjoining the Adams farm. It was known as Willsboro District School Number 4. You can see that it's not too unlike some of the little one-room schoolhouses that have survived in Guilford, notably the Clabbert Hill District School on Clabbert Hill Road. In a tailspin after Frank Adams' death at only 57 years of age, Dora Adams and daughter Elisabeth moved to West Bridgewater, Massachusetts upon invitation of a friend. Elisabeth had just completed 8th grade. Here she was enrolled in Howard Seminary, a private boarding school for girls. 4 years at the seminary gave Elisabeth some Boston culture, and she yearned for a liberal arts education. She graduated from Wellesley College in 1926. Elisabeth worked 7 summers at the Grand Harborview Hotel, Martha's Vineyard, both during and after Wellesley. Dr. Adams told me that, quote, medicine was the last thing I ever thought of, although she did major in physics. College students worked here in the hotel kitchen, many of them medical students. One of her acquaintances in the kitchen extolled tales and such good times in medical school that Elisabeth thought it would be fun to try the same. And that's what happened. Medical school was expensive then as now. Before Elisabeth started Cornell University Medical College, she earned her master's degree at New York University. She next entered the teaching profession. She taught physics and geometry in New Jersey and also taught English to foreigners in a New York City YMCA. After 4 years of teaching, she had saved $2,500 to continue her education. She graduated from Cornell with the class of 1934, as you can see in this class portrait. In the upper left, top row, far to the left, you'll see Dr. Adams' portrait. Note in the lower left, the second from the left, the portrait of one gentleman named Leroy Wardner, Wardner. Dr. Wardner last lived in West Hartford, and his daughter lived in Guilford, who was Mrs. Colin Bradford. Some of you may remember Mrs. Colin Bradford. And I interviewed Dr. Wardner, Mrs. Bradford's father, in 1989 about his memories of Dr. Adams in medical school. Well, he started knowing her when they worked at adjoining dissecting tables, according to Dr. Wardner, and he referred to her, quote-unquote, carriage. That is the way she behaved. He said Elisabeth was, quote-unquote, frumpy. She had no concerns about her dress and had none of the trappings of the women who were on the make, according to Dr. Wardner. This is probably the reason that Dr. Wardner said the male medical students tried to kid her and embarrass her, but it didn't work. Every joke they played on Elisabeth, she revenged them with double punch. Contrary to popular opinion, Dr. Adams did not come to Guilford to retire. She moved here because she had her fill of life in New York City. As she told me, parking was a tremendous problem, and she was sick and tired of carrying an EKG around on the subways and tired of waiting for stoplights to turn green. For 10 years in the city, Dr. Adams worked for Dr. Connie Guion, Guion, who helped revolutionize outpatient care for the poor in New York City. Dr. Guion was a workaholic who was Dr. Adams' mentor, instilling in Dr. Adams the same work ethic, such as making house calls. Dr. Adams gave up a blooming private practice in the city to find something different. So here it was, a country girl turned city girl, yearning for the country again. Dr. Adams drove along the Connecticut shore with her mother, Dora, searching. They prowled around in Guilford, especially because Dr. Adams' paternal great-grandmother 5 times was Anne Leet Collins, who had lived in the historic Collins house at number 205 State Street, which house is still standing. Number 1 Whitfield Street, here shown at the northwest corner of Guilford Green, was for sale at this time, and almost impetuously, Dr. Adams bought it. She found new roots in a country town with a population of 5,000 people. In 1951, January, Dr. Adams opened her practice in Guilford. At first, she felt pangs of remorse because, as she told me, quote, I was burning all my bridges back in New York, but this passed. One of her first cases was for a young mother living on State Street with 3 small children. As Dr. Adams told it, the woman went to bed with a bad headache, taking the preschooler with her. The two others in kindergarten and first grade stayed up. When the woman awakened, she found a horrible scene in the kitchen. The children had filled various saucepans with a gallon of paint and were trying to make colored popcorn on the stovetop. Hysterically, the mother called the telephone operator for a doctor, but a doctor could not be located. Finally, the operator said there was a new woman doctor in town who she would send. So Dr. Adams responded to the scene on State Street and gave her patient a sedative and cleaned up the mess in the kitchen. The historic plaque at number 1 Whitfield Street helps ensure memories of the legendary Dr. Elisabeth Adams. Added to this plaque in the last 10 or 15 years was the sentence, Dr. Elizabeth C. Adams lived here 1950 to 1987, friend and physician to the people of Guilford. 10 years of Dr. Adams' handwritten diaries have been preserved. They portray a good picture of her dedication and range of activities. And here is one snippet from her diaries. And on top is her December 2nd, 1979 entry, stating, quote, police brought lady beaten by her husband. Then there was a neighbor in with abdominal pain. And then she writes at 11:30 p.m., a lad who ran his car into a telephone pole on River Street came in, sewed up lacerations on both sides of his mouth, and then brought him home. So here are other entries randomly selected from Dr. Adams' diaries. July 21st, 1971. Fixed boy with a hand cut at Maple Shade. That was a celebrated dairy on the Boston Post Road, so many of you may remember it. Frank was seen at 2 a.m. atop Attorney Carter's office with gas. At 4 a.m., Arden was pronounced dead on Long Hill Road. From there, I met Madison Ambulance at 4:30 a.m. at Flat Meadow Road and Route 77 and committed flow to Connecticut Valley. January 17th, 1978, she writes, midnight, Donut Land, with ambulance men, John Sanzoni and Joel Helander. April 21st, 1978, visited Mrs. Veronica early and again at 6 regarding nosebleeds. Took blood from a drunken driver at police station and dressed his old leg wound. April 22nd, 1978. Called at 4 a.m. by police to pronounce a fatality at Bishop's Curve, where one Anthony Blank ran his Dodge into the big tree. To Donut Land. There was a little restaurant on Route 1 at the corner of Church Street at the time. Some of you may remember it. And fetched coffee to John and Joel and George Sullivan. These were my early days in the emergency medical services. To Sperry Drive to a hallucinating lady. April 23rd, 1978. Officer Shiner here, RE and eye infection. An injured fireman seen here. April 24th, 1978. Went to Pearl Street and sent Emery Blank to the ER. Later, Sergeant Roach brought a boy who, while wrestling with another, broke one of Lapone's big glass windows and cut his hand. April 25th, 1978. 2B Blank to change catheter and arrange for Westlake Lodge after getting Title 19 clearance. April 30th, 1978. Sewed up a chin laceration. May 2nd, 1978. She writes that she committed one Michael Blank to Connecticut Valley from police station. May 6, 1978. To police station to bandage a prisoner's finger cut on glass. To rec center for an eyelid burned from a gas stove. May 9th, 1978. A kidney stone patient came groaning and was carried out by ambulance. May 11th, 1978, rode to and from grand rounds at Yale with Dr. Rick Hessler. May 15th, 1978, met Genovese pharmacist who brought penicillin for a patient to Donutland. You can see Dr. Adams spent a lot of time at Donutland, and that's where often I'd encounter her, if not an encounter in her in her big house on the northwest corner of the Green. Gave him a bag of Munchkins as a reward. May 21st, 1978. Out at 4:30 a.m. to North Branford for rendezvous with police. In this photo that I took for the Shoreline Times newspaper in 1968, Dr. Adams is standing by. Can you see her? She's over to the far left with her right hand on her hip. She's waiting for the extrication of the injured Camaro driver on Route 77, Durham Road. It was a head-on collision involving a mother and 4 teenaged girls in the same car after leaving Guilford High School. Before 1972, when Guilford had its first EMTs and eventually paramedics, linked by radio to hospital-based emergency department physicians, the town of Guilford had a Cadillac ambulance. In those early years of the EMS system here, we relied on speed more than care. And after 1972, it just became the opposite. I think it took Dr. Adams a while to get used to this. And I can see her now when we would pick up a patient at her house. If it was a life-threatening priority case, she'd come out to the ambulance with us, waving her hand and shouting, "Go, go, go." Anyways, mostly before 1972, Dr. Adams responded to motor vehicle accidents and other rescue squad calls all over Guilford. After all, she was used to riding ambulances in New York City. That was through the Bellevue Hospital, and all part of her internship. And after all, in Guilford, she had been made honorary police chief and honorary fire chief. Dr. Adams had a flashing blue light on her car and a police radio. I can hear her cackling voice now. Car 68, calling Guilford. And that was her radio call designation, Car 68. Is there anybody who can remember the marker plate number on Dr. Adams' little brown Volkswagen Bug? Well, when I gave this presentation on November 19th in the Guilford Free Library, in response to that question, Stephen Dudley jumped to his feet and, with his steel-trap memory, correctly recited Dr. Adams' license plate, AP1981. And as I remarked at the time, I think Stephen Dudley and myself were the only people east of the Mississippi who remember what Dr. Adams' license plate was. There are stories and legends galore about Dr. Adams' fast responses to calls, such as the time she responded to the town hall for a report of a heart attack patient. Traffic around the Green was jammed, so she took the path of least resistance, driving up over the curbing in her little VW and diagonally across the Green. And I suppose she was putting her New York driving skills into practice. According to the late Connie Merman, whenever Dr. Adams roared up Fair Street, their family knew she was passing through because she'd always be in second gear. It was her favorite gear. If you wanted to confirm something like that, you could check in with Jerry Dosty, who ran Jerry's transmission at the time, and could talk to him about the many times he replaced the transmission in her car. I think we were all relieved when she got an automatic transmission in her VW. Until her retirement, Dr. Adams was the long-serving director of health for the town of Guilford. A former town engineer reminisced that Dr. Adams waged a full-time war, practically, against failing sewage disposal systems. She was forceful in her actions, as Dr. Adams could be, to bring property owners into compliance with code. especially with discharges into Long Island Sound. In Sachem's Head especially, homeowners were subjected to unannounced backyard visits. On one occasion, according to an informant, Dr. Adams sat on a boat during the night to watch the discharge of waste into the Sound from an uncooperative restaurant owner. So here are some entries from her diary, January 12th, 1978, viewed sewage overflow, Soundview. April 22nd, 1978, went in squad car with Officer Cole to persuade Laura Blank to remove or cover her rubbish thrown over the bank by the road. May 13th, 1978, early a.m., observed sewage at Lupone House. Phoned Lupone. June 8th, 1980, to Great Hill Road about the silly horse manure complaint. April 24th, 1978, a perfect morning, Dr. Adams writes in her diary. A perfect morning walk across the green with papers for engineering office and picking up litter to and from. Her diaries continually make reference to these treks across the green early in the morning, and it was usually to deliver a pouch of papers for the engineering department. In her role as director of health, she had to certify that lots in new housing subdivisions were buildable. She walked every new lot with the town engineer to determine if the land could accommodate a septic system by reviewing test pits for percolation rate. Dr. Adams was decisive, yes, and sometimes impetuous in her actions, yet commanded respect, instant respect from all. You would never cross or argue Dr. Adams. In my earliest years of working for the Town of Guilford Ambulance Service, my office was out of the 911 Dispatch Center, 31 Park Street in Town Hall. One time, Dr. Adams' complaint about peeling paint on the two front doors of Town Hall apparently fell on deaf ears. One early morning, and I remember this, before her first appointment at 1 Whitfield Street, with patients, she marched across the green with her staff, prepped the doors, and painted them. Dr. Adams loved flowers. This is an interesting entry in her diary of May 13, 1978. She wrote, to breakfast at 6:15 a.m. with Leslie and Todd Potter, to walk in their woods by West River with them and their dog, Panda. Saw carpets of wild violets, anemones, many red trilliums, cowslips, and fiddleheads. Picked the latter and took bouquets to several. The former owner of the Madison Flower Shop said that she was a regular patron, racking up endless bills for flowers sent to patients and others. Many of you have probably heard about Dr. Adams' affinity with skunk cabbage, what I will call that wild odoriferous plant that crops up in swamps in early spring. It was even the topic for a Yankee magazine article about Dr. Adams. You can look it up. March of 1986. I have a cherished memory of going on a skunk cabbage hunt to one of Dr. Adams' favorite secret spots, as she called it. In my diary, my own diary entry of March 1st, 1985 tells about it. So Dr. Adams called and asked if I would like to accompany her on a hunt. She said to, quote, skit right over to Westlake Lodge, where I could meet her. Westlake Lodge was a convalescent home on Westlake Avenue, which is now known as the Guilford House. She told me that I should bring a, quote, little sweater because I would need it. Well, we met and we rode in my car to a secluded spot on Upper Moose Hill Road. How I remember this. And here a little brook runs parallel to the road. Dr. Adams traipsed through the woods ahead of me. She wore a plaid skirt, and I put this in my diary. Brown boots, plastic bags over both hands, and yes, a little sweater. There were skimmings of ice on the brook and dimpled patches of snow everywhere that marked her treasured plant, skunk cabbage. I carried the bucket and the trowel, and I did the digging. She did the searching. She referred to, quote, the beautiful pyramids of the cabbage, and particularly wanted those. She also wanted moss. Beautiful moss, as she called it. Well, before bedtime that evening, I found on my doorstep, my front doorstep, at Norton Avenue, 3 pie plates filled with water, fresh moss, and 11 skunk cabbage plants. Only Dr. Adams. The rest of the potted skunk cabbages were delivered to residents of the convalescent home. And believe it or not, potted skunk cabbage appeared on Sunday on the altar of St. George Church. So many of you who knew Dr. Adams knew that she was an outspoken advocate of no smoking. She created this illustration for distribution to her cigarette-smoking patients and others. Tobacco is a dirty weed, and this is in her own hand, by the way. 'Twas the devil did plant the seed, it stains the teeth and soils the clothes, and makes a smokestack of the nose. So in time a smoker must breathe O2 through a hose. And note her illustration. And here's another satire on the vice of smoking drawn by the doctor. Read and heed. As tragedies come more to view, a push with no nonsense is due. Please know that lately in this state occurred this, fitting to relate. After 9 months in respirator, a smoker went to her creator. Yep. Retired Police Lieutenant Don Thompson relates that police officers in Guilford were required to have their annual physical with Dr. Adams. Many of the smokers among them dreaded this visit to her office because they would be on the receiving end of a stern lecture. In fact, she would often confiscate their cigarettes, throw them in the trash bucket in front of them, and if they didn't have their cigarettes on person, she'd send the police officers out to their vehicle to get the cigarettes and order them to bring the cigarettes into the office, whereupon she would trash them then and there. Dr. Adams encouraged and nurtured new doctors in Guilford, such as the late Dr. Brian McGrath, a dermatologist. Dr. McGrath and his wife lived on the 3rd floor of Dr. Adams' mansion house and interned with her after medical school, beginning in 1959. In 1970, the 2 middle schools in Guilford were christened with names. The Abraham Baldwin Middle School, off Bullard Drive, off Long Hill Road, and the Dr. Elisabeth C. Adams Middle School on Church Street. Principal Duncan Craig presented Dr. Adams with a key to the school and a dozen red roses at the opening assembly. And you can see in this front page Shoreline Times article a photo of Principal Craig and Dr. Adams receiving those roses. At that time, Dr. Adams said she must live up to the honor of her name used for the school. She once made a remark with regard to the school carrying her name, saying, quote, "I've really done nothing other than to complete each day's work so as to start the next day's work." Yet Dr. Adams was enormously proud of her namesake school. She gave endless attention to its students and faculty. Upon accepting the honor in 1970, she wrote the following to the Guilford Board of Education. This challenge, and the challenge she refers to is the naming of the school and the honor that went with it. I accept only with the expectancy and hope that each person who learns of this matter, again being the naming of the school, will be moved to strive the more to make his or her individual name be counted for even higher ideals. Principal Duncan Craig and later Principal Carl Balistraci loved Dr. Adams with all their hearts. They invited her to many school functions. In this photo, Doc Adams is watching the boys' soccer team in action. In Carl Balistraci's remarkable reminiscences about Doc Adams, he related that in the 1950s and 60s, the doctor maintained standing credit in her account at her parents' grocery store, Carl's Market. Carl's Market stood on the north side of the Boston Post Road at the intersection of Church Street. And Carl called Dr. Adams, quote, a one-person welfare department because she'd pack up bags for groceries for patients who needed them the most. Here she accepts Guilford J.C.'s Distinguished Service Award in 1967. Dr. Adams attended assemblies and concerts at her school, often honored by receiving bouquets of flowers. Attention was riveted on Dr. Adams in 1987, as you can see in this photo, already a living legend, when she stepped up to the podium. The occasion was the 50th anniversary celebration of the Adams School building. Seated in the back are, left to right, Superintendent of Schools Robert Morrison, First Selectman Frank Larkins, Guilford High School co-principal Carl Balistraci, and then you can see just a portion over to the far right of Principal Duncan Craig. Dr. Adams embraced her school. She once said that although she didn't have grandchildren, all the students at Adams School were her grandchildren. In 1990, as this Shoreline Times newspaper article relates, the 350 students at Adams School marched in parade fashion to Guilford Town Hall to surprise Dr. Adams on the occasion of her 40th year in Guilford. The band played, and the school chorus serenaded her. Dr. Adams stood on Guilford Green holding hands with Principal Craig, facing the gathering. Her delight was clear, as the Shoreline Times newspaper photo shows. Here's the legendary doctor standing on the green clapping as the parade went by. In 1992, the Guilford Board of Education composed this song of thanks to Dr. Adams. I'm sure it's hard for you to read on the screen here, but it's called Consider Yourself, a song of thanks to Dr. Adams. Consider yourself at home. Consider yourself part of the Board of Ed. We've taken to you so strong. It's clear we've needed you all along. Consider yourself worth much. Consider yourself more than $1 million. We ain't got a dime to spare. Who cares when all of your heart we share? And then it continues. Dr. Adams' diary entry on December 4th, 1979 chronicles her tradition of sending cards or notes to every student at Adams School. And on December 4th, you can see she wrote that she sent cards to 550 people, including students, faculty, and workers. Here is one of Dr. Adams' notes, handwritten notes to an 8th grade student, Amy Palouse, now Amy Earls, in 1991. Dear Amy Palouse, congratulations to you for being a leading scholar. To have your name on that list means that you have been doing good work. Best wishes to you for the holidays and for time ahead. Sincerely, Elisabeth C. Adams. Guilford, Connecticut, 9 December 1991. Now, often in ending a note to somebody, she would insert Guilford, Connecticut, USA, planet Earth. Never quite knew why she put in planet Earth. That's something we never asked her about. The Elizabeth C. Adams Middle School has a unique program called CARES, C-A-R-E-S. C for community, A for attitude, R for respect, E for effort, and S for scholarship. These are attributes that Dr. Adams lived by and encouraged within the school. School faculty members carry a CARES coupon book, just like this one, and whenever a student exemplifies these attributes, the student receives a coupon, which is then deposited into a drop box in the central office. And quarterly, I'm told, a ceremony is held to recognize these students. Dr. Adams embraced community as well as her school. She could spot specific needs, both great and small, and rally for the cause, such as her vision for what developed as a Meals on Wheels program. She was a person of vision and concern, of rare stamina and energy. She once told me that her secret good fortune was requiring only 4 or 5 hours of sleep each night, which allowed her to do all that she did in the course of one day. And by reading her diaries, it's almost unimaginable what she could do in the course of one day. Day and night, I might add. At 85 years of age, Dr. Adams was asked to go to Faulkner's Island. She was brought out to the island by George Godovan and Kim and Rich Steffen. And here's George Godovan now working for the town of Guilford in the building department over to the far left with a visored cap, and Rich and Kim. Dr. Adams over to the far right, who wore a dress and brought a pitcher of lemonade. And this photo was taken in 1990. Many people in Guilford remember August 18th as Dr. Adams' birthday. Here, the senior citizens honor her in the community center, the old community center, and what had been the Church Street School. Two of my treasured photos interacting with Dr. Adams include this photo. It was taken outside of the former Watrous Convalescent Home in Madison for reasons that I cannot recall. And I'm just kind of guessing that we were discussing a patient following an emergency ambulance call. And this photo was taken about 1990. And then this is another photo I treasure, taken August 21st, 1991, on the second floor of Guilford Town Hall. The occasion was a surprise birthday party for my 40th. The room went silent, as I recall, when Dr. Adams arrived. Notice the black balloons and streamer celebrating a 40th birthday. And these were hung by my co-workers in the emergency medical services. Jill Losey of Guilford impersonated Dr. Adams in the 2007 Guilford Fair Day Parade. Do you remember that? It was a hit. Here's Jill. She got it right. The medical bag, open sandals, short gray hair, skirt, and stethoscope. And marching behind the Nutmegger Chimney Service banner are patients in Johnny coats, one with a broken arm, and many of them in crutches. Dr. Adams' spirituality embraced all churches and all faiths. When my father was a deacon in the First Congregational Church of Guilford, he suggested that Dr. Adams be invited to give the sermon on what was called Layman's Sunday, an opportunity for a layperson to deliver the sermon. She accepted. The date was Sunday, October 19th, 1969. And I recorded Dr. Adams' delivery of that sermon on a big Webcore reel-to-reel tape recorder. I still have the tape, and recently I had it enhanced by a studio in Westbrook. For this program, I'm going to play a snippet of the audio to bring the legendary doctor's voice and thoughts into the room where you are now sitting.
An address by a layman was stipulated in the bulletin this morning rather than a sermon. For who am I to address you good Christians who have come here, and what I will say will be but to cite, in the words of others, prayer and praise. However layman's Sunday began, it now serves a purpose in heightening the appreciation of all of us to the efforts and accomplishments of the ministers of this church. It would be interesting to hear what each one of you would say were you to replace me at this moment in this very spot. You will not hear from me of Biafra or Vietnam or matters of poverty, race, youth, or crime. Each of us is free to crusade or to join a crusade of his own interests. Here may we find some enlargement and enrichment of the faith which motivates and sustains us, whether in crusades against the troubles of our times, or in our daily workaday duties. My daily workaday duties for several years have been the practice of medicine, during which I have seen much of sickness, of sorrow, of suffering, of striving, of sacrifice. I would bring you an impression which I have gained. It is this: the people who meet best these situations which we all encounter sometime during our lives, more or less, sooner or later, are the people who have a religious faith which is well-rooted and grounded, or in the language of the computer, well-programmed.
Another example of Dr. Adams' spirituality occurred on July 20th, 1976. It was an unforgettable day. My EMT partner and myself were dispatched to number 85 Fair Street for the report of an unconscious woman. It was the little district schoolhouse where the unforgettable Guilford personality Dorothy Seidler, Miss Dorothy Seidler, lived alone. We found Miss Seidler seated at the dinner table, deceased, fully dressed, with a full teacup at her place setting. She had been there several hours, and there was nothing we could do to help. Dr. Adams responded promptly, entered what was known to me as always the schoolhouse, took one look, grabbed each of us by the hand, and asked us to say the Lord's Prayer together with her. Dr. Adams made the difficult decision to retire at the age of 82. She yearned for the support of the community to step down from practice and sell her house. In all the unsettlement of making the decision, she followed her own wisdom and told me this. And I'm going to quote her because I made a note of this at the time. Athletes train their muscles for competition. People have to train their minds for change. Decisions are very difficult. Guilford gets to be part of your anatomy. When you tear yourself from it, the wound heals. In transition, Dr. Adams lived for a short while at number 14 South Union Street. Correction, I guess at first she lived on 14 High Street near the Guilford Green, but then she moved to a retirement community at Covenant Village in Cromwell, Connecticut. And in this photo, you can see the house that she purchased in 1989, a cute little cape at 232 South Union Street. She longed to be back in Guilford and lived here for a while. Dr. Adams last resided at Evergreen Woods Retirement Home in North Brantford. On July 8th, 1994, 5 days before Dr. Adams' sudden death, she visited my grandparents' historic farmhouse undergoing a full restoration. The house was a bustle of activity with workmen hammering and sawing. She toured every room of the house, upstairs and down. After a while, she startled us, shouting in such a way that almost caused alarm with the workmen. "Come here, quickly, everybody. Come here." Everybody came running. And she stood in the dining room over a pile of sawdust, exclaiming, "Ooh, look at this," as she held a long spiral wood shaving up to the window light. "Isn't it beautiful?" she said adoringly, and everybody agreed, of course. You never disagree with Dr. Adams. And it was beautiful. She asked if she could take it home, which of course she did. And the day after her death, that shaving was found, set aside on the top of her bedroom dresser. Now, I don't have that shaving with me, but this is the type of shaving that we found in the pile of sawdust, a curlicue spiral shaving. The one that she picked out of the sawdust pile could not begin to compare to this, but this is what it was. She picked it up and held it to the light and had everybody come running. Most unforgettable. Dr. Adams always appreciated the little things in life, whether it's skunk cabbage or a wood shaving or an ant crawling across the sidewalk. And that's often why I think she often devoted a lot of attention to the underprivileged and perhaps those who were disabled and those who needed help the most. On July 13th, 1994, Dr. Adams was stricken in her Evergreen Woods apartment. At 9:30 p.m., her close friend and former secretary Barbara Fredericks with husband Roger brought her to Middlesex Memorial Hospital in their car. In the ER, Dr. Adams offered a diagnosis of what was happening. An ultrasound proved she was right. She self-diagnosed.
Yep.
She requested the doctors in Middlesex ER that no extreme measures be taken and told the doctor that she had had, quote, "a long, happy life." And in those moments, while being sedated for intubation, Dr. Adams went into respiratory and cardiac arrest and died. She had been in the ER only about 1 hour. Dr. Adams was laid to rest next to her parents in Willsboro, New York. This evening, or tonight, today, at the conclusion of this program, we pause to honor and remember a great American. If part of one's immortality is practicing service above self and serving humanity, then Dr. Adams' immortality is assured. Thank you.